Hello and welcome to People and Profit. This week we're looking back at the year in business in France and forward to 2018. Coming up, he was elected as the pro-business, pro-reform president, but has Emmanuel Macron made a real difference for French entrepreneurs? A major overhaul of French labour laws finally becomes a reality, so will employers be hiring more in 2018? And as the recovery in the French economy takes hold, we'll be discussing the outlook for the year to come. Well, to discuss these and more issues, I'm joined in studio by Delphine Remy-Boutang, who's the founder and CEO of the social media agency The Bureau. Michel de Rovira is the co-founder of the biscuit maker Michel et Augustin. Hello. And Mark Dean is a journalist at Bloomberg based here in Paris. Thank you to you all for joining us. Mark, I'm going to start with you. We were promised a big pro-business boost out of Emmanuel Macron. Do you think it's manifesting itself?
Well, the simple election of Emmanuel Macron really changed significantly, I think, the view of international investors of France and indeed of what French businesses view the country's prospects are. It's not necessarily because of specific things that Macron has done at this stage, I think, but it's this in the context of Brexit, in the context of Donald Trump. Suddenly, France comes out as looking very, very well behaved, and that's showing up in all the confidence indexes. And in fact, France is on track for its best year of growth since 2011. So I think things have 2017 is a turning point for the French economy. Okay,
Delphine Remy-Boutang, were you cheering as an entrepreneur when Emmanuel Macron was elected?
Absolutely. I think it represents the startup nation that French and young people actually wants to do, because if we look at the numbers, young French people want, when they finish school, to go and work for startup, 60% of them. The other thing, and I think the startup nation has to be also symbolized by the fact that many women today are becoming entrepreneurs, even if the number is still low, 10% of French women entrepreneurs. However, the Prime Minister has declared recently that he wasn't going to accept only 1 in 5 entrepreneur women, and I think there is a lot of positive thing that is happening by the government.
Okay, Michel et Augustin is also a company that works out of New York as well. Is there going to be a boost, do you think, for French exporting out of Emmanuel Macron because of the French effect now?
Well, it's clear that it's what's been happening for the past 6 months or the past 9 months is something quite exciting for us, because we want to develop the French pastry know-how everywhere in the world. So the more France has a good reputation, the better it is for us. And so all in all, what happens is that there's a feeling that things go in the right direction, and this is helpful for us as a business to represent France elsewhere. So French bashing is over, and there's a French recovery that happens, and we want to be in this position to represent the quality of France everywhere in the world, namely in New York, namely in London, where we're going to try to boost our development in 2018.
And people are listening more, do you think, now with the new president?
They look into France, they look into our products with a nicer image than they used to. So, I mean, I think this is very, very positive. And then on the other aspects, as much as French consumers are concerned, there's an issue which is how much growth is there going to be in the habits? Are people going to consume, to spend more for food and for this kind of thing? And this is one of the challenges for next year, to see how the consumption for households is going to evolve.
We're going to get to that in a minute. But first of all, Mark Dean, I'd like to ask you about the labour law reforms. This has been something that we've been talking about in France for a very long time. Emmanuel Macron went at it with presidential decrees to get some of these changes in place. Is that an important first battle for him to have won?
It is an important first battle. I think you have to distinguish between the impact of the reform itself, which will be long term, as opposed to, suddenly that all of a sudden unemployment is going to drop, et cetera, et cetera. But I think this was very important to show that his vision, his economic vision, was beginning to be substantiated and putting credibility behind his government's plans to reform the French economy. People wanted to see something, and when I say people, I mean other governments in Europe, investors abroad and so on and so forth, wanted to see something happen relatively quickly with the arrival of the new government, and they did. And I think the key to his success, because the reform went through quite easily. The key to his success was that it was part of his campaign platform. So, France.
People knew what they were voting for.
Well, people accepted that he won the election and that he had campaigned on this, so it was legitimate. I think the reforms going forward might be more difficult.
Delphine, when you look at your business, with these changes in place, do you think that's something that would encourage you to hire? Is the labour law actually an issue for you?
No, I think the issue is more about finding skills. This is something that in the digital environment that I am in, I'm finding really difficult to find people with the new skills. We know that 60% of the jobs of 2030 do not exist just yet. So how do we educate people to turn into those new jobs? We know that artificial intelligence is going to take over. Therefore, all those old jobs are about to disappear. How do we create and how do we perform in new ones? I think that's more of a concern for the company that created. And I also wanted to say I was based and I lived in London for 15 years and I came back 5 years ago to create my company. So the message is we can create companies in France. It's a good place to entreprendre. And entreprendre is a French.
It's a French word.
It's a French word indeed.
And in those 5 years, how big has the change been? Because obviously 5 years ago we would have been talking about President François Hollande. Under Emmanuel Macron, do you think, are we working towards a trajectory of a better situation for businesses?
Totally. We're working towards a much easier situation for people to create companies. It's becoming much more easier because the difficulty is l'administratif.
Yes, the red tape.
Française, who is really, really heavy, and it's becoming less and less and lighter for people to invest as well, to grow. I think there is a question of are we ambitious enough in France? We know that 95% of companies are less than 10 people in France, so therefore, we have this Peter Pan syndrome that we absolutely need to explode, and we need to go further. And I look forward to 2018 for doing that.
Michel, has your company moved on from its Peter Pan syndrome?
Well, I think it's a big issue, trying to be ambitious enough for the company. And we made this big step in 2017, which was getting a new shareholder, which is Danone. And so I think we want to develop this company as far as possible. We want to develop it abroad. We've said in New York, in London, and in many other countries. And to explode the Peter Pan syndrome for us, it was to find an ally that would help us grow as much as possible in other geographies. Being alone, just Augustin and I, it would have been very difficult to develop the company in the US, in Asia, in Africa, and so on. Now we have the network of Danone, the sales people of Danone, who can help us in many countries in the world. And this is, I think, a good card to play in the next few years.
It certainly is. Mark Dean, you were talking about the improved situation of the French economy. As you say, we're seeing it in the confidence surveys now. We're looking at fairly strong growth next year. What's going to be the next big hurdle for the French economy, do you think?
France is coming up against its full potential growth at this stage. And that structural reform, which the government plans to do, essentially can't come fast enough. The economy is now growing at about 1.7, 1.8% a year, which is not bad, but not good enough really to fundamentally advance the country and change life. And in order to get that up into sort of 2.5% growth, it's very much about education and training. Delphine said that, the problem is to recruit people, and that's something that you hear from businesses across the board. And there's a lot of work to do. So Macron's government has plans for reforms in the pipeline in 2018. That includes training, that includes the unemployment benefit situation. And I think those are going to be harder reforms to do. They're less well known, he campaigned less on those issues. But also just sort of making this happen and getting beyond the 1.7, 1.8% level where we are now, it's not going to be easy.
A bigger challenge. Yeah. And unemployment, we won't see that change anytime soon.
Well, I mean, all sort of surveys show continued net job creation, but unemployment decreasing, but not a whole lot. So we're talking about, I mean, the Bank of France came out with forecasts last week that saw unemployment dipping below 9% in 2020. So that's sort of, 2 years out and still 9%. It's still pretty high.
Still some way to go. Okay, well, let's look towards a more positive sentiment for the year to come. Delphine, what's going to be your big business goal for the coming year?
The main project that we have is the Digital Women Day, the 6th edition that is taking place in April 17th at La Maison de la Radio, in order to promote women innovation and to give more women this vision that they can be part of this digital sector, because it's the future and because we created it. Women created coding is a language. It was Ada Lovelace, an English woman, who created it. And we need to go back to this idea that we belong to this sector. This sector is the future. Today, it's 28% of women in the digital environment. So we are underrepresented, clearly. So we need to be more around this area. So that's going to be the big goal for 2018.
And for Michel and Augustin, what's your big plan for 2018?
Well, there's a big bet for us, which is only 15% of the households do buy some Michel Augustin products every year. And we want to take this 15% to 20%. And so next year, we're going to make big advertising campaigns in February, in May, and in September, to make sure that people think of the Michel Augustin brand more often when they do their grocery shopping. And so we want people to discover the vache à bois, the chocolate mousse, and all these products. And so this is the big step that we need to take in 2018 in France.
Okay, and we wish you the best of luck with that as well. Thank you to all of my guests. Thanks to you for watching. If you'd like to join the discussion, you can do so on Facebook at France 24 Business, or you can tweet me at NewStephen. Until next time, thanks for watching.
You might watch France 24 in English, but don't forget, France 24 is also broadcast in French, Arabic, and Spanish.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a las noticias de France 24.
Available on cable and satellite systems and online media in France and around the world.